Hello and welcome to the Petticoated Swashbuckler. My name is Maren and today we are making a Tudor gown. Or, I say today, it's not going to take a day. I've made a kirtle that took, 55 hours. The gown's going to take even longer. And anyway, time is an abstract concept. It's a relative thing. I'm preparing for a ball. I am making the outfit of an early 1500s French or English noblewoman, and that's by the time you see this film, that ball has already been. And you might have seen pictures of the end result on Instagram, for example. I might include some in the intro bit, maybe. So hopefully the project is done. Hopefully I got everything done in time and I'm happy with the result. But anyway, I thought it'd be interesting to kind of take you through all the bits and pieces that make up an ensemble. And tell you how I went about making them. And hopefully you'll have fun watching it. I had fun. I have great fun making it. And instead of giving you all of this information as one big kind of chunk in late January, I'm going to kind of spread it out, sprinkle it out throughout the winter and the spring. Hopefully I'll be able to light up your days a little bit. I'm making a gown to go on top of this kirtle that I have here. If I can get her to turn around, this is my kirtle, and I'm really happy with it. And throughout the Middle Ages, really, and also into the Tudor period, it seems like what people are wearing, you have 3 layers to be kind of properly dressed. You have your innermost layer, which is usually linen, and usually the layer that you wash. You have a kind of a tunic, and then you have some sort of over tunic. And by the Tudor period, what you have is a kirtle and you have a gown. And the gown in the period seems to be a fairly gender neutral term. Like, men wear gowns as well. For men, the gowns are usually very wide, kind of very free flowy types of garments that fall straight from the shoulders, wide sleeves, can be short or long depending on your stature and your age. If you're an elderly gent, for example, you might wear your gown all the way down to the floor, or if you have some very kind of very non-active work, you might wear a very long gown, maybe dark colours. If you're younger or more active, you might wear a shorter gown, sort of knee length. And there's also rules as to what sort of fabric you're allowed to make a gown from, what sort of colours your gown is supposed to be. The Tudors are very big on what's called sumptuary laws, which are basically laws detailing what you can and can't wear. Now, the first Tudor king, Henry VII, in England, he wasn't too bothered with it. He just kept on keeping the same laws that his predecessors had. He'd just won a civil war, and maybe he was very busy just kind of establishing his royal house and filling up the coffers again. But his son, Henry VIII, of lots and lots of wives fame, he had several sumptuary laws made, and his son, Edward VI, and his second daughter, Elizabeth I, they were very into this. Edward VI made several sumptuary laws. Elizabeth I had several proclamations and statutes about what people could and couldn't wear. And I love these rules because they're so they tell us so much about a society. Mostly that people weren't following these laws because, if people were following them, why keep reiterating the same laws again and again and again? there are some rules for like ordinary people, mostly about how much your clothes can cost. So as a labourer, for example, you couldn't spend more than a given amount of money on fabric for your clothing. You weren't allowed to use imported fabrics. You had to use homemade fabrics for your clothing. Sometimes you couldn't follow the one rule without breaking the other. For example, imported wool from Ireland was cheaper than locally produced English wool, which made people, it meant that people had to choose between, can I follow the rule about not importing, but then I have to spend more money, or do I follow the law saying how much money I can spend, but breaking the one saying I can't import it? So it's really interesting. However, the laws are much more concerned with people higher up on the social scale. And that's because a Tudor person would expect to be able to tell who you were from your clothes. So a Tudor person would expect to be able to see you and instantly say, I know that person has this position in society, and I know how to address the person. I know how to, should I bow, should I curtsy, should I shake your hand, should I be, help you, should I ask you for help, should we engage in some sort of trade, So there were many rules. For example, a mayor of a town might be required to wear a scarlet gown, scarlet being both a colour and a type of fabric, whereas a magistrate maybe would have to wear a dark blue gown, and there were rules saying, you can't wear this fur unless you're a baron or an earl or a lord of some sort. This is really, really complicated system. For women, gowns were you had more options. It could be just a very wide, loose garment like it was for men. But women could also have more fitted gowns. It could be, and they could close on top of your kirtle in many various ways. You could just pin them down the front. They could be laced down the front. They could be tied with little kind of laces or strings down the front. You could close them over a stomacher, or you could cover the closing with, or the closure with a placard of some sort. They could have short sleeves, they could have long sleeves, they could have everything in the middle, and they also changed more throughout the period. So that's, the silhouette changes, and also the preferred way it opens and the preferred sleeve shapes. It all changes a lot throughout the period. Much more than men's gowns, as far as I've been able to tell. Now, common for all of them is that they show a little bit of the kirtle underneath. And this is such an important thing for people in the period, to let you know that I can actually afford two garments. I haven't cheated. I'm not just wearing a gown, I'm also wearing a kirtle underneath. I'm going to be trying to make what's called a French gown. And Henry VIII's second wife, Anne Boleyn, she has kind of been credited with bringing this over from the French court, along with the French hood. Now, I'm not so sure she was the first one. She came to England from the French court in 1522. I'm pretty sure I've seen portraits of women wearing something that looks like a French gown before 1522. The English have always had a very complicated relationship to France, where you have, you look up to them and despise them at the same time. Of course, when the Normans invaded in 1066, they came from Normandy, which is a part of France, so that there's always been a connection between the British Isles. Since 1066, always been a connection between the British Isles and Normandy. This was strengthened in the High Middle Ages, in the 1100s and 1200s, when one of my absolute girl crushes, Eleanor of Aquitaine, married the King of England. She married the King of France first, and then she got sick of him and had their marriage annulled and went on to marry the King of England instead. And she brought with her, she'd inherited from her father basically the entire south of France. So for a period of what's often called the Angevin Empire, England ruled over a very, very large chunk of what we today think of as France. The moment after she and her husband died, England started to kind of lose bits and pieces of those French areas, mostly because her sons were arguably pretty useless. Some of her sons are quite well known, like, you know, Richard the Lionheart or John Lackland of Robin Hood fame. And England kind of kept losing bits and pieces of their French territories throughout the Middle Ages and well into the Tudor period. So Henry VIII is both kind of at war a little bit with France, and also at the same time everyone's looking to the French court and wanting to emulate what they do, because they are considered very fashionable. French as a language is considered more cultured. The music and literature is considered more fashionable, and also their clothing. So I don't think Anne Boleyn necessarily brought all of this French fashion to the English court, but I think she was part of this wave of like French the appreciation of everything French. You know, she just hit that wave and kind of catapulted off it, and then got decapitated, but that's another story. So I'm going to make a French gown. The French gown is characterized by having, it's got the lacing down the front, but it's covered with a placard, so the front is quite smooth. It has these massive triangular sleeves that you fold back to kind of reveal the lining of your big trumpet sleeves, and just pin it to like your upper arm. And they have very wide skirts that are open in the middle, so you can see the kirtle underneath. I have kind of started a little bit. I have used the pattern that I used for my kirtle, which worked really well. I've just kind of changed it up a little bit. I've added an arm side. I've made a pattern or a mock-up for the sleeves. I'm not sure if you can actually see. Look, sleeves. They look kind of funky, but I think that's because my mannequin does have arms, but the arms are very rigid. I won't be standing like this when I'm wearing it, so I think I'll be fine. When I put this sleeve on my arm, it looks a lot better. I've started marking out the little kind of pieces, because the kirtle only had 3 pieces. It had 2 back pieces and a front piece, whereas the gown bodies have a lot more. It has 2 back pieces, 2 side back pieces, 2 side front pieces, and then a front piece to lace, and then a placket to go on top of the lacing. So, and then the sleeves, of course. Now, this is a new period for me, so I'm leaning very heavily on the book The Tudor Tailor by The Tudor Tailor. It's a company run by a couple of women in the UK. They are absolutely brilliant. Go check them out. They've written a lot of good books. They've made a lot of wonderful recreated costumes, and their Etsy shop is to die for. And they want me to line everything. Now, I have a very nice red velvet that I'm going to be using for this. It's quite thick. So I wouldn't have thought a lining would be necessary, but they want me to line everything, including the skirts. They really wanted me to line the kirtle skirts as well, but I'm already kind of worried about dying from heat stroke, and I'll never wear this kirtle without any sort of petticoat anyway, so it should be fine. But I do have some linen lying around. I know that sounds weird, having linen lying around, but I've done historical costuming for so long now, that in my world there will always be a time when you suddenly need linen. So whenever I find linen on sale or in any sort of discount situation, I always buy linen, because you suddenly need it, like now. So I think I have enough linen. I think I have I do have some silk, I am actually planning on lining these sleeves with fur, with fake fur, because I love the fur lined sleeves that you see in portraits. However, I'm already kind of worried about dying from heat stroke, which sounds weird because I'm going to be wearing this in Norway in February, and you'd think if there's any time and place where heat stroke shouldn't be a problem, it's Norway in February. However, the locale where the ball is held is usually really warm, so we'll see. But if I'm worried about that in February, imagine wearing that in like July. So what I think I'll do is I'll make the fur lining detachable, so I'll be able to wear this without the fur lining, but then I need another lining for my sleeves. I do have some silk. I bought this, it's a scrap bit of silk that I bought from a friend many years ago for hardly any money. I think it's just enough for a couple of sleeve linings. It's good to get it used. And then the Tudor Tailor book tells me that I need to insert some wadding in the back panels of the skirt to add extra bum oomph. And I don't oh, it's going to be a lot of fabric. I don't have any wadding laying around. That's not something I use a lot in my sewing. Probably not enough, to be honest. But what I do have is this. This is actually some like wool felt type of fabric. I think it's actually coat fabric, to be honest. It's probably some man-made fibers in this, but it won't be visible, and I won't use that much of it. And it's kind of thick, and I think it'll give a little bit of extra in the bum. This is basically getting the Kim K bum the Tudor way, using wadding. So I think I have everything I need. Also, if I've understood the instructions correctly, I'm actually going to make up the bodice by itself and the sleeves by themselves and the skirt by themselves, and then kind of combine it all in the end, which makes sense to me. It's a little difficult. The methods or the techniques in the book I find a little difficult to understand sometimes, because it seems like they expect the reader to use a sewing machine, whereas I want to do it all by hand. And so some of the techniques seem quite modern. Like they want me to bagline the bodice, for example. That sounds very strange to me. So what I think I'll do instead is I will flatline all the pieces and then stitch them together using English seams, because those are a little more kind of structural and they'll help the bodice kind of keep its shape better, I think. So what I will need to do now is to cut out all the pieces from the velvet and the linen lining and the wadding and the silk for the sleeves, and yeah, we'll get to sewing. This is very awkward. We'll get to sewing. I hope you want to come along. Alright, I've done some sewing, and let me just say, it's a reason why the people who write the Tudor Tailor books are the people who write books about Tudor tailoring and not me, because my idea of flatlining everybody's piece and then stitching them together did not work at all. Alright, so I did like the back panel. Can you see it's just I wanted this to be quite a sort of smooth curve. It's just really angular and weird. Didn't work at all. So I am abandoning that attempt, and I've tried it the way they recommend, of stitching all the fashion fabric pieces together, stitching all the lining pieces together, and then stitch these together. I haven't stitched them together yet. I have done all the red velvet pieces together into like a bodice shape, and I have done all of and everything I own is covered in these like little red velvet dots, and everything my boyfriend owns, and a lot of things my mother owns, and some things at my workplace. It's basically red dots everywhere. I've also done the white linen. I have even boned like the front, that's going to be lace. So this is the placard. I've stitched that as well. I've also got these linen pieces stitched together and kind of hemmed where they need to be hemmed. And I've inserted some boning because I need boning and lacing at the mid front. The bodice is going to be laced up here, and then this is going to cover it. This is a placard that I have also stitched and boned. I'm not 100% happy with it. Like, it's a little... I interlined it with some stiffer kind of buckram-like fabric because I thought that'll look right for the period. It kind of doesn't. It's kind of too stiff. And it's also a little long. I think it should be more like up here. But I'm going to leave it for now, and we'll see if I want to change it up. I also have a very grumpy cat because my boyfriend's out carrying firewood for our fireplace, and my cat thinks he'll never see him again, so he's panicking. So next up is to I need to make lacing holes in this. I need to put these two together, and I also need to get onto the sleeves. I have made the sleeve linings. They have little linen linings on top, and then they have little silk kind of turnbacks, and these little hoopy things is going to be what I attach my fore sleeves to, but I still need to stitch together the velvet sleeves. I just left them on my mannequin to stretch out a bit, to be honest, because I've stored this. I thought I'd stored this velvet in like a neat roll, but it was a little more wrinkly than I thought it had, had time to become. So I'm just stretching it out a bit because, as you know, velvet is notoriously difficult to iron. So yes, next up, making the sleeves, finishing the bodies, and then putting them two together. she's nearly done. I'm really happy with how she looks from this angle. Of course, it's we have to put on the placard, and the placard is way too high. So I'm actually going to have to take off a good, I don't know, like at least a good 3 centimeters off of this. Otherwise, it's going to be like way too high up. But that's fine. I can do that later. That's fine. However, do you remember I talked about the... Sorry, I got a lot of boxes of like Christmas cakes that I'm trying to like scuffle away with my feet without spilling cakes all over the floor. Sorry, do you remember I talked about the padding that goes into the back bit? So I have done it because whenever else I've tried to do something else than what the Tudor tailor recommends, I have ended up being not very happy with the result. However, I give to you the abominable bum. Like, this is padded and it is cartridge pleated and it is so heavy. And there's nothing like, apart from the kirtle, there's nothing underneath here. And it's just, it's kind of, see, I think a part of the problem is that this is too big, right? I need to take this in at least like 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters each side. Also, it's too long, can you see? If this had been like here, it would still have been ridiculous, but less ridiculous. Now, it's too far down. And I also do feel like this padding, it's too much of it. I need to remove at least 1 layer of padding. So after I've spent, hang on, four hours attaching this skirt to this bodice, I'm gonna have to cut it off and do it all again. I'm not very happy about that. But I'm also not very happy about this. So, like, it's boink. Like, the shape isn't bad, but it's just, it's too much and it's too low and it's just, yeah. I'm annoyed. I won't deny it. The sleeves are nice. Like, let's take our joys where we can get them.